layered network controls exist to block, filter, and contain threats as they attempt to move between zones with different trust levels. No single firewall rule or device can account for every possible failure, misconfiguration, or novel attack technique. Defense in depth applies the same philosophy used elsewhere in security architecture by assuming that some controls will eventually fail or be bypassed. When controls are layered across zones, failures are slowed, detected, and contained before they become catastrophic. Network architecture that embraces layered enforcement is therefore less brittle and more forgiving under real-world conditions. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the CISS books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series.
Firewalls are the most visible component of this layered approach, enforcing traffic rules based on addresses, ports, protocols, and in some cases, content. At a basic level, firewalls decide whether traffic is allowed or denied according to defined policy. This policy reflects architectural intent by expressing which systems should communicate and which should never interact directly. Firewalls also create enforcement points where monitoring and logging can occur consistently. When firewalls are treated as architectural controls rather than simple filters, they become central to enforcing trust boundaries rather than just blocking obvious threats. Packet filtering represents the simplest form of firewalling, focusing on individual packets without awareness of broader context. Decisions are made based on source and destination addresses, protocol type, and port numbers. This approach is fast and predictable, making it suitable for high-throughput environments or simple boundary enforcement. However, packet filtering lacks visibility into whether packets belong to legitimate sessions or expected application behavior. As a result, it provides limited protection against more sophisticated attacks that exploit protocol state or application logic. Packet filtering is best viewed as a foundational layer rather than a complete defense.
Stateful inspection builds on packet filtering by tracking sessions and understanding whether traffic is part of an established, legitimate connection. By maintaining state, firewalls can allow return traffic for outbound connections while blocking unsolicited inbound attempts. This significantly reduces exposure to scanning and opportunistic attacks that rely on reaching open ports directly. Stateful inspection also improves reliability by enforcing protocol correctness and dropping malformed or out-of-sequence packets. While still limited in application awareness, stateful firewalls provide a stronger default posture than stateless filtering alone. They represent a natural evolution toward context-aware enforcement. Application firewalls extend inspection into higher layers by understanding specific protocols and applying deeper rule logic. These devices or services can inspect requests, commands, headers, and payloads to enforce protocol correctness and detect misuse. Application firewalls are particularly important for protecting web services and application programming interfaces, where attacks target logic rather than network behavior. By operating at the application layer, these firewalls can block malicious input that would appear legitimate to lower-layer controls. The trade-off is increased complexity and resource consumption, which requires careful tuning and monitoring. When deployed thoughtfully, application firewalls close gaps that network-level controls cannot address. Demilitarized zones provide a structural way to host public-facing services in a controlled boundary network. A demilitarized zone sits between untrusted external networks and more trusted internal networks, limiting how far an attacker can move if a public service is compromised. Systems in the demilitarized zone are expected to be exposed and therefore hardened, monitored, and isolated accordingly. Access from the demilitarized zone into internal networks is tightly restricted and explicitly defined. This pattern reduces blast radius by assuming compromise is possible and designing for containment rather than relying solely on prevention. Two firewall demilitarized zone designs strengthen this containment by separating Internet to demilitarized zone traffic from demilitarized zone to internal traffic. One firewall controls what external traffic can reach public services, while a second firewall controls what those services can access internally. This separation prevents a single misconfiguration from collapsing the entire boundary. It also allows different policy and monitoring focus at each boundary, reflecting different threat models. While more complex, this design provides clearer separation of concerns and stronger defense in depth. It is especially valuable for environments hosting critical or sensitive internal systems behind public services. Reverse proxies play a complementary role by mediating inbound requests and shielding back-end systems from direct exposure. Instead of clients connecting directly to application servers, they connect to the proxy, which then forwards validated requests internally. This allows termination of encryption, enforcement of authentication, rate limiting, and input inspection at a controlled point. Reverse proxies also simplify back-end architecture by presenting a consistent external interface regardless of internal changes. From a security perspective, they reduce the attack surface by limiting what clients can reach directly. When combined with demilitarized zone placement, reverse proxies become powerful boundary enforcement tools. Egress controls are often overlooked but are a critical component of layered defense because they restrict outbound traffic from internal networks. Without egress controls, compromised systems can communicate freely with external command and control infrastructure or exfiltrate data unnoticed. By defining which destinations and protocols are allowed outbound, organizations reduce the number of viable attack paths. Egress filtering also provides valuable detection signals when systems attempt unexpected connections. These controls shift some focus from purely blocking inbound threats to containing and detecting compromise after initial access. Rule management determines whether firewall deployments remain effective over time or degrade into risky complexity. Rules should follow least access principles, allowing only what is necessary and denying everything else by default. Clear naming and documentation make rules understandable to operators who did not originally create them. Regular review and pruning remove obsolete rules that quietly expand attack surface long after their original purpose is gone. Poorly managed rule sets are a common source of hidden exposure because they accumulate exceptions faster than they are retired. Discipline in rule management is therefore as important as initial design. Logging is the feedback mechanism that turns firewall enforcement into observable security control. Logs record allowed connections, denied attempts, and unusual patterns that may indicate scanning, misconfiguration, or active attack. These records support investigations by providing evidence of how traffic flowed before and during incidents. Logging also enables continuous improvement by revealing which rules are exercised frequently and which are rarely used. Without logs, firewalls operate blindly, enforcing policy without providing insight into effectiveness. Visibility completes the control by allowing defenders to learn from real behavior. High availability for firewalls is essential because boundary controls should not become single points of failure. If a firewall outage brings down connectivity, Operational pressure often leads to bypasses or emergency changes that weaken security. High availability designs use paired devices, clustering, or active standby configurations to ensure continuity during failure or maintenance. These designs must be tested regularly to confirm that failover behaves as expected under load. Availability planning ensures that security controls remain in place during stress rather than being sacrificed for uptime. Network address translation interacts with firewall design by changing how addresses are presented and logged. Translation can obscure internal addressing, which affects visibility during troubleshooting and incident response. Logs must capture both translated and original addresses so that activity can be traced accurately. Misalignment between translation points and logging sources can create blind spots where activity cannot be correlated. Architects must account for these effects so that address manipulation does not undermine monitoring and accountability. Address translation is not inherently good or bad, but it must be designed in concert with inspection and logging. Defense in depth with firewalls and demilitarized zones combines thoughtful placement, disciplined rule design, layered inspection, and intentional containment. Packet filtering, stateful inspection, and application awareness each address different classes of threats and failure modes. Demilitarized zones and reverse proxies assume exposure and design for limited impact rather than perfect prevention. Egress controls and logging extend defense beyond the perimeter into detection and containment. High availability ensures controls remain effective under failure conditions, and careful handling of address translation preserves visibility. When these elements work together, network defenses become resilient systems rather than brittle barriers. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.